warming up out there.
Yeah.
It's a little nice. My name is Jeremy. I'm one of the executive directors of Soil to Service, the nonprofit that publishes Edible Wow. Partner in crime, John Piazza behind us there. Very excited for this is the second class of the 2025 Food with Edible Wow at Oakland County Market. Excited to have you all here again. A lot of familiar faces. And today we are very excited to bring a honored partner and guest of Soil to Service and Edible Wow. She's actually now the newly nominated president of our board of directors for our nonprofit. Because when we met Erin, I don't even know, two or 3 years ago, she partnered with a chef of ours that we brought to an event at Greenfield Village. And we started talking, and I got to know Erin and her incredible mushrooms and the wealth of knowledge that she has. And that's just like, mushrooms are just like the surface. Published author, environmentalist, conservator, creative culinary genius, encyclopedia of all things mushrooms, pretty incredible, like marketing guru, digital icon, computer programmer, farmer, mother.
I'm really into sleep. I really like to read, and then I like to try all the stuff I read.
Incredible wealth of knowledge. Very excited. She's kind of blew my mind with the last mushroom recipe she did. So I'm excited for today's. Again, enough about me. You can read about her on the back of the little recipe sheet. And have fun. A round of applause for Miss Erin.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm so happy that we all decided to come out on this very cold week, even though it's way better than it has been for a few days, so yay for that. I'm guessing none of you ever knew that mushrooms could taste like chocolate, and so we're going to have some fun with that today. I really like comfort food, especially this time of year, and am I good here now? Speak up, please. Alright. So I'm a big comfort food person. I grew up in a family of 6 kids, and we're like an ingredients family, not a pre-cooked family. So if I was like, Mom, I'm hungry, it would immediately be like, okay, we'll go cook some things. And so we all grew up making delicious, honestly very sticky things, which is what we're about to do here. And so today I'm going to use my little sister's pancake recipe, and we're going to do $silver pancakes. They'll be a little bit delicious. And she actually won the blue ribbon at the county fair for these when she was 12, so they have a really sweet place in my heart. And you will never find a pancake recipe that reheats as well as these do, so they're really, really good if you're cooking for a crowd, or you all want to eat at the same time, or you just want to do them the day before. They will hold up, and you can heat them back up, and they're awesome. So I pre-mixed our batter on this, but I'm going to walk you through what we did for that. And then once these are sizzling here, I'm going to show you how we make some amazing mushroom syrup using honey. And we only use powdered dried mushrooms in there. And it's amazing because lion's mane mushrooms, when they're fresh and you just cook them that way, you're sauteing them or roasting them or something, they taste like crab. They're very kind of seafoody, they're delicious and buttery. When you dehydrate them, they get really chocolatey, and there's like a total shift. And I've even seen people commenting on like different mushroom coffee or supplement pages being like, oh, you guys must add like cocoa powder or something to your supplements. And the company's like, no, we really don't. But it's actually this incredible flavor that the lion's mane shifts into. It develops this flavor that I didn't even understand what was happening the first time I made this. I was just like, it seems chocolatey, let's try this. And then we made it, and it was like, oh my goodness, this is incredible. So I've been tinkering with all kinds of chocolatey, delicious things with lion's mane. So we're going to tinker with that today. And then I did a cardamom Chantilly cream to go over the top of these. So you're making some ultimate comfort food pancakes here, and it should be pretty awesome. So I'm going to start out with, let's go ahead and start out with the mushroom syrup, actually, because these pancakes are going to cook up really quick for us. And one of the things with, well, first off, you may have heard about lion's mane. They're using it, they're studying it now because it has, they've clinically proven that it can restore neural pathways. So they're now researching it for like traumatic brain injuries, ADHD, Alzheimer's, and all kinds of really interesting possible things that it could help with. And it's delicious, so it is one of my favorite mushrooms, and you're probably hearing about it a lot if you are hearing about mushrooms. And so it makes it extra awesome to work with. But see if I can do this. I might need one of you guys to do this. Looks like I'm too. I don't know how to get this thing started.
Technical issues.
Yes. Here, you do that before I do something with it. So, if you're a honey person, you may have heard that in a lot of the holistic traditions, data principles, one of the things they say about honey is it should never be heated past a certain point. Scientists have jumped in and gone, okay, you know, what does that mean? What structurally happens to the honey? Is there anything to that, or are we just not heating up honey because someone said so a couple thousand years ago? And it actually does structurally, once you get past 160 degrees, it starts structurally changing. It starts chemically changing. And it stops being as great for you as what you're getting if you're keeping it below that temperature. So if you are working with honey, doing different heated things, I usually recommend people use a double boiler. You could also do the same thing I'm about to show you. You could use, like, if you have a yogurt maker with a really low temperature warmer, or even a jar inside of a crock pot with water. The idea is that you're just keeping it really low. You don't want to see it super hot. Otherwise, it just changes entirely what you're doing. So this is heating up. If I just have like a really simple, traditional double boiler here going, there are much fancier ones. And this honey is really cold, so we're going to see if it wants to come out. I usually aim for 150. 160 is really that threshold, but I aim for 150 just because there's a little bit of variation once you got it overheat. So mostly in case I start talking to someone and let it get too hot. Let me see if I just have a slightly more resilient spoon here. Alright, oh, perfect. So what we're going to do is, this is actually some honey from my parents' farm. They own Howell Victory Farm up in Howell. And so this is crystallized raw honey. And it's cold, so it's really giving me a run for my money. And so what we're doing is we're just getting this nice and melty so that we can mix in the powdered mushrooms here without getting clumpy. Because if you try to mix this powder into honey while it's too cool, while it's too thick, you're gonna wind up with just like little lumps of dried powder in there, and you'll never really get the smooth consistency you're after. And low and slow is really the secret here with this. I made a jar of it yesterday, and I ran it for, you don't have to do it quite as long of a double boiler, but I did it in a jar and like on a slow heat. And I let that run for an hour and a half, pulled out, tested it. It was close to what I wanted, but I still felt like it could use a little more time. So I treated it for another hour and a half, and I'm really happy with how that came out. So I just let it mellow for a nice long time. This we're gonna do a little bit quicker here over the heat. So this is just melting down, making sure, just keeping an eye on this water in here so it doesn't start boiling too hard. Because again, you don't want to overheat that honey. Almost got what I want here. So we're going to do this. Usually I wind up adding a tiny bit of water at the end just to thin it down so it's not too thick once you've got it mixed in with the powder. But that's totally a personal preference thing and what you're going to use it for. We started using this. I've never been really into mushroom coffee. Like, I love the concept, but I also love Epsom House. And I just don't want, I don't like the texture of typical mushroom coffee. So I I generally was avoiding it. And then this was originally what we came up with to do instead of mushroom coffee. Because if you have mushroom honey, you can just put that in your coffee or on toast or whatever, and then you'll be quite happy with it. It blends in more smoothly. It works really well in lattes. And we have, how's the sound doing here?
Trying to turn it up as much as we can. Talk to you
Louder? Okay.
Yeah, there's people in the back, you need to hear, right?
Can anyone? Okay.
Turn it up. We are at full power right here, or we get feedback, and these people will then want to fight you because they're getting feedback. So if you could just talk a little louder, Erin, that'd be fantastic.
You got it. I think I turned this thing off again. So, all right, so I'm going to talk as loud as possible. I apologize to people in the front if I'm hurting your ears. We'll get someone in here. But anyway, so my honey is melting down here pretty well. I did just use this whisk in the Chantilly cream that's going to go on here, and so we're going to get a little done here because I only have one whisk, so we're going to pour it. So I'm melting this down. Now while that melts down, this is mushroom powder, and the one I'm using today is actually a blend of lion's mane, chaga, and turkey tail. So all of those mushrooms have some like really great immune-boosting properties. They're delicious. They're all native to Michigan, so you can find them in the forest if you get really into foraging. I actually got into mushroom growing in the first place about 10 years ago because I was driving down the road in Auburn Hills, and there was a sign in front of Bald Mountain State Recreation Area that said mushroom foraging workshop today. And I was like, it's starting in 5 minutes, I need to try this. I had no mushroom knowledge, no anything. And I did the cartoon like peel out and run into the forest. And we spent all day out there, and just this guy was just a wealth of knowledge, and it was so inspiring. And I drove home that day thinking, I'm gonna pick the wrong mushroom and die. And so that led to several years worth of like digging, researching, tinkering, trying to understand like how do you grow mushrooms, right? Because you can get the mushroom growing kit, so you cut it open, you buy it at the store, you cut it open, you spray it with water, mushrooms grow, and then you have no idea what happened, and you can't replicate it. And it was like, it's a very cool experience to see them grow, but you don't necessarily have a replicable skill. And so I really wanted to know, like, from the ground up, how do we grow this? So once I tried it, it was so easy and just so fascinating to watch that I went hook, line, and sinker, fell in love with mushrooms, threw my whole career out the window, and turned into a mushroom lady. So anyway, so these are some amazing mushrooms. And so now this honey's melted up, and I'm about to work some of this into here. And I just used a little pint jar of honey here. This is about half a cup of mushroom powder I'm working into it. It's very much a to-taste thing. I have the jar that I made yesterday, I made for going all over everything here, and I kind of leaned into a stronger one that's more on the dark chocolate side of things as far as flavor goes. There is no chocolate in that, but it does have that like heavy body to it that I really like. If you're more of a, maybe a more milk chocolate person, you could go lighter on this. You really don't have to do a ton. That's not your thing. So just do what's delicious to you. So I'm just using this whisk. It takes a minute to start integrating into the honey, but once it goes, it starts looking very chocolate syrupy. And you just want to keep it moving. You don't want it to get too hot in there because it will start turning into more of a hard candy, taffy type thing if you let it go too far, which is pretty awesome. And if you do that on accident, just like slice it up into smaller candy pieces before it cools completely, and you'll be really glad that you have them. But you want to try and just keep it going here. So pretty happy with that. I'm going to add a tiny bit more. So there are two forms of mushroom powder that you can get. You can just get dehydrated. You can get dehydrated mushroom powder, where it's literally they just took the mushrooms, They dehydrated them, they ground them into a powder, and they're set. But you can also look for extracted mushroom powder, which goes through a process. Usually mushroom extraction is a two-part process. And so the first they do a hot water, or first they do an alcohol extraction. You steep the mushrooms in the alcohol for usually about 6 weeks. And what happens is it breaks down the cell walls that are, it's called chitin, and that chitin is almost like a shell on an M&M. And it holds in all the good stuff that you need out of those mushrooms to really get all of the beneficial properties out of it. So you steep that for a good amount of time, and then you strain it out and dehydrate that powder. And then you do it again, and you do it with hot water, but not too hot, kind of like this. Once you get past that, I think about 180 degrees with mushroom extracts, you start losing a lot of the like alpha and beta glucans and other really good things that you have in there. Then you take all that, you dehydrate it, and then that powder. So that if you find an extracted mushroom powder, that's going to have more beneficial properties in it than a regular, yeah. So they've actually started carrying it in a lot of grocery stores. If you look kind of near the crunchy, healthy stuff, near the flour in the baking aisle, I've noticed that both Meijer and Walmart carry it now. Yeah, so you can do that. I have cards here. We will be adding a line of mushroom powders that are locally made very soon. But actually, I just met Alex over there, who is your local mushroom guy, and he was just showing me the lion's mane powder that he has, and it looks fantastic. So I highly recommend going and visiting him. You could probably get some very good stuff over there. Yes?
What if you had dried mushrooms and you just grind them up yourself?
That would absolutely work. His question was, what if you had dried mushrooms? Could you just grind them up yourself? And absolutely. You could certainly, if you have dried mushrooms already, whether you forage them or maybe you bought too many at the farmer's market and dehydrated them, or you just like to store them, that works out great. And you could just grind them up, whether you have I have a grain mill that we use for grinding a bunch of different kinds of flour. But if you don't have one of those, you can cut it into smaller pieces and even throw it in the blender and let it chop up. It's just when you're doing this, you just want to make sure it's a fine enough powder that it doesn't turn into more like little pasta bits.
I have a small coffee grater.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, coffee grinder is very good for that. So, all right, this is perfect. I'm very happy with it. It's also really hot, so I don't want to tip this up. I think I'm going to just pour it over here. I'm taking this off the heat here. All right. So generally, I don't want to melt it off. Yeah. All right. So this is right here. So typically, if I'm not planning on eating, like using this right away, I'll pour it into a clean jar, like a clean mason jar. If I'm going to be using it like within the week or something, I'll just put the lid on. If I'm going to like use it in a couple weeks or something, I'll put the mason jar lid on, but then turn it upside down on a towel so that that actually seals. Just gives it a little more life there. I typically store it in the fridge. If you do add water to thin it down, you have to store it in the fridge. It will, fungi is alive, mycelium is alive, so it will actually keep trying to like colonize, and you'll see this white growth over the top if you leave it at room temperature, which is actually the mycelium continuing to try and grow, but you don't want that to happen in your food. So if you are doing this and you add water to it, make sure you put it in the fridge. If you didn't add water and you put it in a jar, do the upside down thing, it's okay to store it in the cupboard until you're going to use it. So now we're going to let that cool down a little bit. And how are we doing on sound? Can you guys hear me okay back there? All right, yay. All right, so have we seen one of these things? Everybody needs one of these. I wish I had one of these a million years ago. This is a pancake batter dispenser. They are not expensive. You can get one for about 15 bucks. And it looks like a very Wallace and Gromit kind of contraption, but it makes making your pancakes way less messy and makes them come out consistent and nice and pretty. So do that. Heating up. Temperature's good. We'll see how that goes. All right, so I'm just gonna stay on this side of the speaker. So, all right, so this pancake recipe uses a stick of butter per batch of this that you make, and this is not the full batch of batter. This is just what I brought to do the showing you how this works part. One recipe of this is enough for about 4 people to have a good breakfast together. And you have the recipe for this on the website, correct, Jeremy?
Should be.
Yeah? Okay. Cool. So the recipe for this is on the website, so you can get all the measurements. But this uses a whole stick of butter per batch of this, and it's so worth it. The first time we tried it, we were like, there's no way, like that's way too much butter. It's not, it's perfect. And so you use a stick of butter, cup of flour, 4 teaspoons of baking powder, I think about a tablespoon or 2 of sugar, a little bit of vanilla, and you blend that all up. You want to melt the butter before you put this together, otherwise it's just going to be too clumpy, and then it gets 1 or 2 eggs in there. So it's almost like a cake-like type recipe, and I'm going to thin this just a little bit. So everyone likes their pancakes like a different thinness level, so this is really tinker with it. This recipe lends itself to a slightly thicker batter up front, and I usually thin it down a little bit when I'm getting going, especially using this. If it's too thick, you'll notice it starts to, after you pour a few pancakes, they'll start kind of clumping up a little bit there. So this, I'm not making it too thin because I'll be running, but just giving it a chance to not get stuck in there. So we'll take this, and then the other thing is you always want to put a plate underneath this thing, otherwise the neatness factor just goes right out the window. So all right, so all you do, it's got this little stopper in it here, and usually these come with a couple different nozzles that will release different amounts at once, so I usually use a smaller one just so you can control it better. But you take this, pour that in there, and then let this heat up for a minute. This has a lot of butter in it. You can also hit the pan with coconut oil if you want to. I'm pretty happy with how seasoned this pan is and how much butter's in here. So all you do is you just push this little button and you just get a nice little pancake worth of that. And I think this pan is pretty hot. Let's see how all right, so there we go. So you give this a minute. Is there a way to turn this down at all without turning it off? So this is not the prettiest set of pancakes I've ever poured right here, but we're getting there. There you go. So these are cooking up fast because this is pretty thin batter here. You just want to wait till you're seeing nice little bubbles coming up. And then you give it a good flip. If it's bubbling aggressively, you got your pan on too hot, which is what I just did. And do that. So, all right, well, while I'm working on these, does anyone have more questions? Nope? All right. Yes. Oh, so if you're doing the mushroom honey and you put it in the mason jars, if you put that lid on nice and snug and turn it upside down, the heat will make it so that seal seals. So you just get a little longer storage time on it. And you do want to make sure it's like fully sealed on there. Let's see. All right, that's a good start. Alright. I feel like the first pan when you're making pancakes, the first round of them always come out a little wonky, and then you find your groove here. So we're gonna find the groove here. Do this. Okay. Now we got it. These guys are bubbling there, so while those do their thing, does anyone here know what Chantilly is? Does anyone here know what Chantilly is? You do? Yes. So it's kind of a glorified whipped cream, and if you have whipped cream, technically, the technical definition of whipped cream is just cream that's been whipped. So it won't have any flavor or sweetness or anything to it. So Chantilly is once you add maybe some vanilla, some sugar, you give it a little life and personality. And then the next thing you can do with that to take it up a level is if you add mascarpone to it, which is this wonderful stuff, which honestly, in my head, for the longest time, I hadn't tried it, and I tasted some, and I just thought it was going to taste like a lot more exciting. It's very, very bland until you mix it with something. It's like really thick cream that's sort of like cream cheese, but with less flavor. What it's awesome for is absolutely everything. You can use it in frosting, you can use it in cakes, you can use it in cookies, you can use it in all kinds of things to give it depth and oomph and just make it a lot more rich. But if you use it when you're making your Chantilly, you're working on your whipped cream, it stabilizes it, so you get more structure to it. So it doesn't change the flavor of your Chantilly or your whipped cream, but what it does is it makes it like hold up nicer and look prettier. So if you see in a magazine like someone put whipped cream on something, but it like looks like it's standing up more like a buttercream frosting, that's how they did that. So that's what we did here. Use this. Use about a half a cup of this to 1 cup of cream, however, whatever your ratio is, and then you remember to flip your pancakes before they burn. All right. And so with this, you can actually put this in a pastry bag, and it's got, this is a bigger batch, but in the recipe, the ratio would be 1 cup of cream, half cup of mascarpone, and you can use about a teaspoon and a half of cardamom. You could swap that out for any herb or seasoning or like spice that you want to bring into what you're cooking. You just, do that to taste, but I am a cardamom fanatic. And if you ever have the chance to actually grind your own cardamom and just get the cardamom pods, there is no flavor on this earth that compares, and there's not even a way to describe it. It's not the same thing as what you get when you just buy powdered cardamom. So definitely check that out if you get the opportunity to. So what we're going to do here, and just a quick walkthrough on this. So what we did with this, we just put it in your stand mixer, or you can use a hand mixer. You start with just your heavy whipping cream. You give that 2 or 3 minutes to fluff up until it's standing in peaks. You don't want it to get go too far, because then it'll start kind of granulating and going more towards butter. If you have a really enthusiastic stand mixer, then you'll find that that can happen very quickly. And so that can happen very quickly. So you just want to keep an eye on it. Don't walk off while you're doing this, because it happens faster than you expect. So you put a cup of cream in a bowl. You want your bowl to be chilled so that this happens faster. If it's warm, you're not going to get the nice peaks the way you want. And then you whip that up, and then once that's standing, then you spoon in the mascarpone, spoonful by spoonful as it's still going. And then you can mix in your sugar, your cardamom, and let that blend in, and then don't mix it any longer than you have to after that point. Because after that point, you're going to start pushing towards that, shifting from being a fluffy whipped cream type thing to more of a buttery, getting too thick kind of thing. So you just want to catch it right in time. If you're planning on using this maybe for a party, weekend event, you can make this 2 or 3 days in advance. it will keep its shape, its form, its lift, and it works really great in a pastry bag. So you can put it. Do you guys have that pastry bag? There you go. So put it in here. You can use a gallon Ziploc bag too. You don't need to have a fancy tool. You can stick it in a gallon bag and cut off the corner, and you have a nice little thing. So use what you have on hand. But this is just a nice little pastry bag. We put this in there. You can store it in the fridge like that, so that you can just use it when you get to it on the weekend. But you got 2 or 3 days where it would be perfectly good to use it. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna assemble one of these here. Set this back there. Yeah, if you want to give me one of those, just 2 on a tray, like show you how this is going to go together. These guys are going to help me dish you all up some wonderful breakfast. Thank you, sir. So, all right. So I have these 2 adorable little pancakes here, and then this is our chantilly, and I'm just going to go ahead and see that's got that awesome shape to it. So it's fun because you get your whipped cream, but it's pretty. And then I am going to do these for a second.